Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com, setting the record straight about climate. 1921 was one of the most extreme years on record in the United States. In this video, I'm going to show you how NOAA has tried to make 1921 disappear. This article was in the New York Times this week in 1921. The article said that Earth had a fever, the same words which Al Gore used in his movie. New York Times, Monday, October 3rd, 1921. Freak weather laid to earthly mumps. Fever clings with abnormal heat. New record for 50 years. Many disasters of recent months ascribed to high temperatures and lack of moisture. The old spheroid known as Earth is emerging from a severe attack of meteorological mumps. It has been accompanied by an intermittent fever manifested in a worldwide heat wave of unusual length and intensity. In spite of crises and relapses, earthquakes, tidal waves, cloudbursts, typhoons, waterspouts, hailstorms, floods, and hurricanes in many widely separated parts, doctors are confident the patient will recover. Earth was experiencing a climate crisis in 1921, but the attitude of the New York Times was very different. In 1921, the New York Times was confident the Earth would recover, whereas in 2019 they say it's time to panic. The big difference being that 1921 actually was an extreme weather year. This year has been relatively mild by comparison. Let's take a closer look at 1921. Mansfield News, September 21st, 1921. Repeatedly during the past summer, the front pages of the papers have been filled with the news of flood disasters. Hundreds of lives have been lost and millions of dollars worth of property destroyed. On June 6, 1921, there were massive floods on the Arkansas River in Colorado and Kansas and on the Pecos River in New Mexico and Texas. A river gone mad spreads terror and great destruction. Colorado flood sweeps over plains of Kansas. Pueblo in constant danger as floods sweep through city. The flooding in Pueblo, Colorado in June 1921 was one of the worst natural disasters in U.S. history. 1,500 people lost their lives. The floodwater was 15 feet deep. Here's some pictures of downtown Pueblo, Colorado during the 1921 flood. Quite a mess. Pueblo is not that large a city, and losing 1,500 people was quite a disaster. Afternoon temperatures in 1921 were second highest on record in the United States after 1934. This is the actual thermometer data, not the tampered data you'll see in NOAA graphs. 1921 didn't have the extreme heat of years like 1934 and 1936, but it had very persistent heat. This is the graph of the percent of days above 80 degrees Fahrenheit. 1921 was the fourth highest on record after 1939, 1934, and 1936. However, if we look at the percent of days over 90 degrees, 1921 barely made the top 10. What set 1921 apart was not so much the extreme heat, but rather the persistent heat. A lot of the rest of this video is going to focus on Texas. 1921 was the hottest year on record in Texas. Once again, not so much because of extreme heat, but more because of persistent heat. Encino, Texas had an incredible 157 consecutive days over 90 degrees Fahrenheit from May 8th to October 11th, 1921. This was the Texas record. And during September 1921, Beaufort, South Carolina was over 90 degrees every single day. That's a record for September in South Carolina. Let's go back and look at the Texas temperature graph again. 1921 was the hottest, and there's been a sharp cooling trend. Now let's look at the adjusted temperature data from NOAA. They completely made 1921 disappear, and now Texas is warming sharply. NOAA made the 157 consecutive days over 90 degrees in Texas in 1921 simply disappear. Erased from history by government bureaucrats with an agenda. George Orwell said, "The most effective way to destroy people is to deny and obliterate their own understanding of their history." This graph shows in blue the actual Texas temperatures and in red the fake temperatures being reported by NOAA. NOAA turns a cooling trend into a warming trend by tampering with the data. This graph shows the data tampering which is being done. You can see how NOAA is massively cooling the past in Texas by more than 2 degrees. That's how they create a warming trend out of a cooling trend, by simply altering the data. In 2012, the San Antonio Express published this graph. The data was taken from the National Climatic Data Center at NOAA, and the headline said, "Research shows Texas is not warming." This was after the extremely hot summer of 2011 in Texas, and notice that NOAA still showed 1921 as the warmest year. And here's a graph which Anthony Watts directly captured from the NOAA website in 2012. It showed 1921 as the hottest year in Texas and essentially no warming trend. Now compare that to their current graph. They made 1921 disappear, and now they have a very strong warming trend. So we can see that most of the data tampering by NOAA occurred since the year 2012. During the very hot summer of 2011, ambulance-chasing Texas academics took full advantage of the heat. Andrew Dessler from Texas A&M University published this article in the Houston Chronicle. July 10, 2011. As you sit by the pool and sweat this summer, one book you should be reading is The Impact of Global Warming on Texas. This book, written by a group of Texas academics, is a sober analysis of our state's vulnerability to climate change and the things we can do about it. It's a particularly appropriate read as we suffer through the hellish summer of 2011. While it is unknown exactly how much human activities are contributing to the summer's unpleasant weather, one lesson from the book is clear. Get used to it. The weather of the 21st century will be very much like the hot and dry weather of 2011. Giving extra credibility to this forecast is the fact that the weather extremes that we are presently experiencing were predicted in the first edition in 1995. Well, I'm a Texas academic, and I don't remember them consulting me. I got my master's degree at Rice University. Rice is called the Harvard of the South. I probably would have told them something a little bit different. Now let's look at how these academics did. This graph is the percent of days above 100 degrees Fahrenheit at all Texas U.S. Historical Climatology Network stations. And this is when Dessler wrote the article. It was really hot in Texas during the summer of 2011. But the trend is downwards, and since 2011, summers in Texas have been relatively cool. So Dessler did the standard climate alarmist trick. He cherry-picked one year and ignored the trend. And NOAA did their standard trick. They made the heat of 1921 disappear, they cooled the past, and destroyed America's history. But the 1,500 people who died in the flood in 1921 are very real, and NOAA can't make them disappear. And the record heat wave in Texas in 1921 was also very real. NOAA can't make that disappear. Ayn Rand said, "The hardest thing to explain is the glaringly evident which everybody had decided not to see." That's exactly what's going on with the imaginary climate crisis. All that we're seeing is the same weather which we've always had. But by tampering with the data, NOAA enables this sort of insanity by the New York Times. We need to put an end to this and flesh out the lunatics and criminals in government and the press who are perpetrating this scam. Visit Toto on the web at realclimatescience.com. He's been pulling back the curtain on junk science and propaganda for a long time.